I'm Sienna Bose. Welcome to my channel, Learning Builds Life. Today we are going to talk about anatomical terminology. We finished anatomical terminology about the body movements regionally. Today we will talk about anatomical terminology, the terms used in describing muscles. Muscles. So let's begin. Our first term is origin. And what do I mean by origin of a muscle? Whenever we contract a muscle, there will be two ends, one end that moves and one end that is fixed. So origin of a muscle is the end of a muscle that is fixed at the time of contraction. And what do I mean by contraction? For example, take my biceps. The biceps in this position are contracting. This is called contraction of a muscle, and origin is the end of a muscle which does not move during contraction. End of a muscle which does not move during contraction. Our next word is insertion. An insertion is the opposite of origin. It is the end of a muscle which does move during contraction. End of a muscle which moves during contraction. But there is an important point to remember over here. Origin and insertion, these two terms can be used interchangeably. Origin and insertion can be used interchangeably, and the reason is that in some cases the origin may move and an insertion may be fixed. When origin moves and insertion is fixed in a contraction. Before we move on to our next few terms, you may take a look at the board. Moving on to our next few terms about describing muscles. Our next term is belly. Number 3, belly of a muscle. And what is the belly of a muscle? It is basically the contractile and the stretchy part of the muscle. Again, let's take the example of the biceps. In the biceps, the part which we can feel over here is, if you can notice, it is contractile and stretchy. So that is the belly of the muscle. The contractile and stretchy part of a muscle is called is the belly. And the opposite of belly is the tendon. Number 4, tendon. And opposite in the sense, I say opposite since the tendon is actually the non-contractile part of the muscle. The non-contractile part of the muscle. Non-contractile part of the muscle. That is a tendon. Now, one very simple example of a tendon is the tendon of the biceps muscle. Biceps muscle. And this biceps is called biceps brachii since it is in the arm. Biceps brachii. Because there is even a biceps femoris, which is in the leg, but the one I am talking about is biceps brachii. The tendon of biceps brachii is inserted into the radial tuberosity. The tendon of biceps brachii is inserted into the radial tuberosity. And now you must be thinking, what is a tuberosity? Well, tuberosity is basically a rounded projection of a bone to which there may be an attachment of any muscle or a ligament. That is a tuberosity, and the biceps brachii is inserted into the radial tuberosity, which is a tuberosity of the radius, one of the bones in the forearm. Now, before we move on to our next few terms, you may take a look at the board. Moving on to our next few terms, but before that, let me tell you something about the tendons of the biceps. The biceps actually have 2 heads, and those 2 heads can be as long head, and short head. And their insertions are the long head of the biceps brachii is attached to the supraglenoid tubercle. And what is the meaning of supraglenoid? Well, in the scapula, which is the shoulder blade, there is a cavity called the glenoid cavity, which articulates with the humerus of the arm to form a shoulder, but that is glenoid cavity. The area above the glenoid cavity is called the supraglenoid tubercle, since supra means above. So supraglenoid tubercle. And the short head is attached to the coracoid process of scapula. This is attached to coracoid process of scapula. And that is another process which is kind of like a hook shape on the scapula, and that is where the short head is attached to. So that was all about some things about the heads of the biceps. Now, I think that was a bit away from our topic, but you may still take a look at the board. Going back to our terms, we have aponeurosis. And what is the aponeurosis? The aponeurosis is basically a tendon only, but a flattened tendon. Aponeurosis, a flattened tendon. And one very good example, again, with the biceps brachii is the bicipital aponeurosis. The bicipital aponeurosis, which is basically the form of a tendon only, but it is just flattened. That was all about aponeurosis. Next we have Raphe. Number 6, Raphe. And what is the Raphe? The Raphe is a kind of a band of interdigitating fibers. And now what do I mean by interdigitating? Like, let's say you take your fingers only. If you do your fingers like this, it is called interdigitating. Similarly, in the Raphe, the fibers of either a tendon or an aponeurosis interdigitate with each other, and that is stretchy. The Raphe is stretchy, unlike a ligament, which is our last term, ligament. And what is a ligament? A ligament is basically a segment. It's basically something which joins the two segments of any joint. That is a ligament. So now you may take a look at the board. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.